Now that we've understood that what editors want, let us align ourselves on how to develop a manuscript. So, developing a manuscript involves 7 stages. First stage is thinking before writing, choosing the right journal and article type, using the right process to write a paper, language, ensuring that the paper is up to date and in the right context, choosing the correct article structure, and being prepared for common questions by reviewers and editors. Take them up one by one. So thinking before writing, what does thinking mean? We all think, right? But you have to think of the criticality of the most important points. So don't think as an author, right? Think as a reader, what the reader wants to read. What can the reader derive from your particular article? So you need to be very clear. Your article should be very easy to read. Often we try to make articles very fancy by using fancy terms, but we should never overdo it, because as I said, the article should be easy to read. Only then it will attract your audience. Of course, scientific words and the most important words should be incorporated, but the language should be easy. So what can you do while you are thinking? So first, write down the central message of your research. What do you want to convey to your audience? Summarize your entire research in one sentence, 1 or 2 sentences, right? And why is that? Because what we usually say is, if you do that, you can very clearly specify what is the novelty of your book, right? Because that will be incorporated into the most important sentence, right? Now, there is something called elevator pitch. If there are people from the marketing background in this call, in this webinar, they would understand this elevator pitch. So elevator pitch usually means that you meet somebody up in an elevator and you have only 2 minutes and you need to convince him for an appointment or convince him on a topic. So what do you say in 2 minutes to that person so that he's convinced? That is called an elevator pitch. So it is always recommended that you summarize your entire research in a few sentences and try explaining this to people around you, to your friends, to your family members, and see if they are able to understand what you are trying to convey. Because if they can understand, the editors and the reviewers, they are subject experts. They can very easily understand your paper. And then it involves 2 parts. First is reading the guide for authors. I think I will repeat this many times during my presentation, but reading the guide for authors is something which is of prime importance. All of you should read the guide for authors, not once, not twice, as many times as you can. Because this guide for authors will give you the complete details about layout and section, nomenclature and abbreviations, reference format, types of figures and tables and number of figures and tables, statistics and guidelines to submission. So you have everything in guide for authors. Every journal will have a guide for authors in its homepage. So go and read the guide for authors. Next is choosing the right journal. I think this is something which is a burning question in every researcher's career. Which journal should I read? Where should I publish? Now, we can give you simple tips on understanding how you can choose a correct journal. So we must understand that a very common reason for editors to reject an article is because the article does not fall in the aims and scope of the journal, right? And we discussed how important aims and scope and guide for authors is. So before you submit to a journal, you need to make sure and you need to ensure that the paper is attractive enough for the editor and the readers, right? And how can you select the right journals? First of all, by understanding the aims and scope of the journal. So your topic does not fall beyond the aims and scope. What type of articles does that journal include? Who is the audience who is going to read those articles? And what are the recently published papers in that journal? Because that gives you an idea of what is the current focus of that journal, right? And one way of choosing journals on the for your interest in the Elsevier for the Elsevier journals is by this finder journal finder, this tool called journalfinder.elsevier.com. So if you go to this particular tool, this by simply inserting your title, abstract, and selecting the appropriate field of research, you can get important information about which are the journals, Elsevier journals, that is of the same interest as your particular article, what is the acceptance rate, the open access options, journal insights, and all these things which will really help you in understanding which journal is more appropriate for your own research. On our tool called Scopus, there is a separate tool where you can actually compare up to 10 journals on one single platform and assess which journal is better. So it is always said, you always choose the right journals to read also. Because there is a famous saying which says, if you read quality, you publish quality. And that's where access to Science Direct is so important for HEC member institute, because Science Direct is the Elsevier's leading platform of peer-reviewed scholarly literature, and it provides high-quality answers to improve research performance. In the right process to write a paper. Now, the right process to write a paper, again, very subjective. What we are trying to show you is the overall skeleton and how you can design your article. So first is collecting the elements of the paper, which is creating an outline of your entire research. So write down your central message, the questions that need to be answered, preparing draft versions of your plots, figures, summarizing your main findings, and selecting references. This is your first stage, right? And when you write your first draft, do not worry about grammatical mistakes or whether there is coherence between two sentences. Just try and write down everything that you can recall about that particular research. Write down everything. Don't edit in the first draft, right? And don't worry about the language quality as well. And once you have written your draft, then you read it as a critical reader, right? So you read it as a reader and you try to see whatever points you have put down. Is your message clear? Are the readers or will the readers be able to understand what you are trying to say? And then what you do is, then you do your editing. This is where you rewrite and you improve your article structure. What you need to do, you need to revise everything, put everything in order. Okay, ensure that there is coherence between two sentences. One sentence leads to the other sentence and there is a meaningful connection between the two. If there is anything that has been written more than once, redundant text, you need to delete it, right? Write short sentences, right? Don't write too long sentences, because then, again, as I said, the essence of the article should not be lost, right? And then once you finish writing, do take feedback from your co-workers or seniors or colleagues, because they are the first reviewers of your article, right? So take feedback from them, see what you can improve. And when I talk about language, I think that we have a separate slide on language, because this is one of the major reasons of any article being rejected. Article has been written in poor English or poor grammatical, there are grammatical mistakes. Of course, I'm talking about English journals that publish in English language, right? And it is always advised that editors usually say and they understand that English is not everyone's first language, right? So if that is the case, we need to take help. We need to ensure that our article is perfect, written correctly, and then you can actually make it a lot impressive and easy for the editors and reviewers to read your paper and understand it very well. And here on your screens, there are a few suggestions on what you can do to improve the language. So write short and direct sentences, convey one piece of information in one line, right? Avoid multiple statements, and it is always advised that average length of sentences in scientific writing is only usually 12 to 17 words, right? So don't make your article, the sentence length too long, right? Then if you have used any abbreviations like I.E. or abbreviation of an institute or a university, please explain it clearly, right? Use present tense for known facts and hypotheses, and past tense for all the experiments done and all the results, right? If you can ensure all these things, you are good to go. Here are a few examples of how you can reduce the length of your sentence. So a number of can be written as several, fewer in number can be written just as fewer, right? It is clear that, clearly. So you can use all these, and there are many more that can actually help you in reducing the length of your sentence. And I have said this in my slide on what editors want. So please ensure that the paper is up to date and in the right context. That means your work is not an isolated piece of research. It should have some connection with the past, right? Or with the future. It is not something that probably will not create any social or an economic impact, right? And of course, as I said, it should build upon earlier work. So there should be something that has been done before. Based on that, we can do something new. Then we need to very clearly say what is known and what is yet to be known. And then you need to clearly determine what you are trying to uncover, right? And you should also mention if there are any still unanswered questions that are still remaining to be answered after your research, right? Now, in a reference list, the editor and the reviewer, they want to look at recent articles, top journals, leading scientists, self-citations. So do not, I would not say don't self-cite. You may self-cite, but do not self-cite irrelevant. Because if the editor sees irrelevant self-citations, that is a major turn-off for any editor. Because that also comes under ethical issues, right? So please ensure all these things in your references. If you look at the correct article structure, again, this is a very generalized article structure that I'm going to show you. So let's say we talk about the title, followed by authors, abstract, and let's say in title, as I already said, that the title should include your main findings, your major findings. Then comes author, so you need to clearly mention who is the first author, who is the corresponding author, co-authors, etc. Abstract, so as I told you, abstract is one of the most important parts. So make sure that it is easy to understand, written in the right context, and there are no grammatical mistakes. Then comes keywords, so you need to choose the keywords very strategically to ensure that they are searchable in ANI databases and use only established abbreviations. For example, DNA. So we all know that there is an established abbreviation for DNA. Use these ones which are more commonly used. And again, check guide for authors clearly. Please read the guide for authors. Then comes your introduction, and here is where you go to do the entire literature review. You need to tell the audience why you did this research. You need to convince the readers that your work is really useful, right? It clearly addresses what is the problem. Is there an existing solution? Why is it not the best, and why are you suggesting that this one is the best? What is the main limitation, and what do you plan to achieve from this particular article? Then the methods that have been used. So again, describe how the problem was studied. So the entire method of doing this research needs to be put down in black and white, including, let's say, in case of laboratory scientists, you need to also mention which equipment you have used, which make, which model, right? Everything needs to be in black and white. Why? Because this method section is going to ensure that is your work reproducible or not. So a reviewer may want to reproduce your work and see whether this is reproducible or not, right? So that is why you need to give every detail about the method of research. Then talking about results and discussions, what did you find, and why do you think it is so important that it was needed to report in this paper? And you include all the data, including figures, tables, videos, or any other information that you have. And then conclusion. The conclusion has to be very short and clear. It should justify your entire research, right? And it should give the concluding remarks and also suggest future experiments. So a paper should not just end by addressing a problem, giving a solution, but it should end with other possible research that can be done. So every article should lead to another invention or another article. It should encourage others to write articles. Then acknowledgements, so people who help you in research, the advisors, financial supporters. So here is where you would mention the funding agency's name, proofreaders, supply of materials, right? Suppliers. Then you mention the references. I think we are having a separate section on references, which is the second session that I'm going to take on Mendeley. And there we are going to help you out with using Mendeley and how using Mendeley you can automatically create citations and make your bibliographies by a click of a button, right? And then if there is any supplement information, so we all should know every journal has limitations to number of tables, number of words, or to type of information that you can provide. So let's say there is a calculation sheet or a PPT of your particular research, and you wish to submit it. So you can submit it as a supplement information. On Science Direct, if you go and search for articles, on the left hand side you are going to see a lot of supplement material in forms of tables, videos, and much more. And you can simply download them and use it in your own research. Right. And then be prepared for common questions from reviewers. So reviewers, they are very analytical, right? So they would want you to basically comment on the importance, validity, and of your conclusion, right? They would also want to see whether that topic is in line with the journal requirements. The introduction is clear, well balanced. Are the experiments correct? So there they are going to look in methods and if they can be repeated or not, right? If the quality of the tables, articles, pictures are not good, again that is something which actually comes, it is very noticeable if the quality of a picture is not good. And if the quality is very good, again, this also helps you in further getting acknowledgement from the reviewers, right? And then are the results well presented and analyzed? So they're also going to look at the references, as I said earlier. So the reviewers will have a few questions in mind. If you can just ensure that you have already answered all these questions on your screen, you have basically done 50% of the reviewer's job, right? So again, if you can make the reviewers and editors happy, reduce their workload, it is going to help you in getting their acknowledgement. Of course, quality is something which is of prime importance and the basic. So what I'm saying, all these suggestions go beyond quality. Next, now that you have learned that how you can plan your article and then make it very structured, the next important point that comes is submitting a manuscript, and then what you can do to ensure smooth submission and approval. So this is your opportunity to convince the editor that why they should publish your article. So you should take that opportunity, and you should always write a good cover letter. Now, cover letters are very important because you cannot mention everything in a journal article. So whatever information is equally important but is left out, you can mention in the cover letter. So you can describe why this article will make that journal special, right? So you need to comment on the importance of your article, why the editor should publish this article, and if there are any requirements from the reviewers that have been mentioned in the guide for authors, you need to comply to that, and you need to mention that you have already complied to all these points, right? There is a checklist which you need to fill up. Then you describe about yourself, so you mention a few lines about yourself, your track record, your research area, describe your research field, right? And then what are the main findings of your research, significance of this research, relevance to the journal, and then you may also suggest good reviewers from your end. Now, it's totally the editor's choice to accept those reviewers or a few of them from your list, or totally reject them and use some other reviewers which he has in mind. but you can always give your suggestions. And there is a reason why. Because, sometimes for particular topics or particular subject area, it is very difficult to find good reviewers. Again, if you can make the editor's life easy by suggesting good top scientists in those particular fields who can be reviewers, it makes the job of an editor a lot easier, and it also ensures that your paper is not delayed. Because if there is no reviewer assigned quickly, the paper will take more time to get published, right? So always give your suggestions in form of a cover letter. On your screen, you can see a sample cover letter, right? So the sample cover letter, as I said, apart from the earlier points, you can see final approval from all the authors. So the co-author, corresponding author, and other authors who are involved, their approval should be in place so that all of them agree. And see, they have mentioned suggested reviewers on your screen also. So that is something, and that is how you're going to write a review letter, a cover letter. Now, cover letter may not be, you might be thinking that, who will read the cover letter? Sometimes the reviewers, they would first look at the cover letter to get a background of the entire research and the entire article. Because that makes it easier for them to assess the importance of this particular article. So again, as I said, make life of editors and reviewers easy. That will help you in the long run. Now, the editor has the final call of either accepting a paper, rejecting a paper, or giving feedback to the author to improve a paper, right? And if such feedback comes, you should ensure that you note down all the points, respond to each point, and mention it again in the cover letter that these were the suggestions given, what you have done to improve your article. If there is a comment on the reproducibility of your results, then you must do additional experiments to prove the same. And once you have done that, you can again design the cover letter and include all these details there and resubmit your article to the journal. Having done this, a very major part that is covered and that is very important is publication ethics. So there is a very famous saying which says it's a wise to trust all and equally wise to trust none, which means that you cannot trust everybody. But that doesn't mean that everybody is not doing the correct things, right? So you should be very careful. So what this sentence means to say is, choose your next step very carefully and assess everything, look at everything from all different angles. Right? So you should always obey publication ethics, right? So what do I mean by publication ethics? If you know, there is a website called www.publicationethics.org, which is specified by COPE. COPE stands for Committee on Publication Ethics. They are the people who lay down the ground rules of to maintain integrity and trustworthiness of scientific work and the way it is reported, right? So again, it's a forum for editors and peer-reviewed journals to discuss all aspects of publication ethics, and they would also advise on how to handle people who have misconducted or have been found to misconduct, right? And on the Elsevier platform, you will see a website which is www.elsevier.com/publication-ethics, where you can find general publication ethics that needs to be complied with for all authors. And in the guide for authors, for every journal, you will get very specific publication ethics that are very specific to that journal. So do read the guide for authors again. And you must have noticed that during your submission process, you are often asked to confirm a few declarations. So that is taken as a consent that you have obeyed or you have followed all publication ethics and not done any misconduct, right? Now, if any misconduct is detected, what happens, right? So misconduct can include a lot of things like data fabrication and falsification. So data fabrication is basically making up data. So there is no data that you've got, you've just made something up and then you have reported it. That is called data fabrication. Then there is data falsification, which means manipulating the data. So you have got some results and you have changed it to suit or comply with your flow of your article. That is called data falsification, and they are considered to be unethical publishing behaviors. And then we talk about plagiarism. And again, plagiarism is a topic that can take even one day to understand. But we must understand what is the basic of plagiarism. So plagiarism is basically appropriation of somebody else's ideas without giving them proper credit. So let's say you have taken a piece of information from an article and you have not credited the author. That is called plagiarism, right? That is why we have citations. That is why we give references. So we must not forget to give due credit to the person who is the owner of that information or who has registered that information. Serious offense could lead to rejection of papers, academic charges, termination of employment, and it usually brings a very bad name, right? Again, few of the other examples of unethical behavior is submission to multiple journals, right? And you should always submit to one journal first and then wait for the answer of that journal and then go to the next journal, right? And then improper author contribution. So basically leaving out authors who should have been mentioned and including authors that have not contributed. So all these things, they come under publication ethics. Now, what happens if a misconduct is detected, right? So as I said, it could lead to a lot of things, but if a paper is retracted from the journal, it doesn't mean that the paper is removed. So it means that the paper remains there forever and it looks something like this. This actually brings a lot of bad name to the author, right? So always ensure retracted paper will remain online and it will continuously remind all the readers that there was misconduct that was detected in this particular article and these were the authors involved. So following publication ethics is of utmost importance.